What's the worst review you have ever seen? Is it Doug Walker's review of The Wall? Some game journal making a glorified advertisement dressed as a review? Or maybe it's some jerk running a content farm who cares more about making moolah than giving genuine insight? All of these are great answers, but I think I have a better one, and it's created by a man named ER. For those who don't know, the subject of this video, Enigmatic Reality, or ER for short, is a YouTuber who specializes in reviewing films and TV shows. His reviews tend to accentuate the negative and typically cover something that a lot of people like, and or is considered woke by folk who are a bit too upset by black guys in the new Star Wars. His reviews tend to be marred with a complete lack of understanding of the source material, the comedic sensibilities of a basement dweller who still uses 4chan in his 40s, and a tendency to just make shit up. And to demonstrate this, we're going to take a look at his review of Mad Max Fury Road. Now, I want to preface this by saying that if you don't like Fury Road, that's entirely fine. The problem I have with the review is the way ER goes about analyzing the film, not his negative opinion of it, though, full confession here, the film occupies a soft spot in my heart. I should warn you, this video will spoil all of Fury Road, so keep that in mind. Also, I first learned about ER and this review by watching a response from the channel We Are Not Live. As far as I can tell, this review is lost media, so I wasn't able to check if I was plagiarizing them. So I feel that I should at least thank them for making me aware of the subject of this video, and making this whole thing possible. Now, without further ado, let's take it from the top and start talking about his review. He starts with a small gag, an announcement that he's treating the film as a standalone because he hasn't seen the other entries, and by saying this.
The Mad Max film, in spite of the fact that there's no Mel Gibson, because he's old now, and in case you ever forget, he made a comment that hurt people's feelings.
Okay, let's take a look at the comment that got Mel sacked. Okay, so I'm at the article ER used, and let's see what he had to say. Mel Gibson said, fucking Jew. The Jew are responsible for all the wars in the world. It is claimed that Gibson then asked, are you a Jew? Oh. He hasn't even started summarizing the film yet, and he's treating someone getting punished for hating minorities like it's cancel culture gone mad. I know what you're thinking, and yes, it does get worse. Next, he says this.
The Mad Max setting is it's a big deserty wasteland where water, food, and the essentials are scarce, but functioning cars and motorbikes are somehow plentiful. But it knows it's and relishes in it. It's all rather kitsch, and it pulls that part off pretty spectacularly, so I won't be nitpicking any of that, at the very least.
I want you to remember that. It doesn't seem like much now, but it'll become very important later.
Max? Is that you? How are you, Max?
Damn, this is kind of awesome. Man, I'm getting into this. I like Max. He's proactive, resourceful, and as the narration before so superfluously stated,
haunted by those I could not protect.
I sure hope that we get some more insight into this tortured character, see what really makes him tick, and the sequence of events that led up to his capture.
Psych! That's the wrong
cinematic motion picture.
I'm not going to go too hard on ER because he said he's treating the film as a standalone, but there are 3 other films in this franchise, one of which being Max's origin story. If the film got into that stuff, it would just end up rehashing old story beats. If you start a film franchise on entry 4, you're gonna be missing context. That's just how it is. Anyway, let's see what he's gonna say next.
Now, I have to applaud Feels Road for leading the progressive stack with the very first trans woman protagonist. Wait, the wiki doesn't mention anything about that. No, but if she were an actual woman, this would make her the utterly cartoonish depiction of a she-man, the old man with breasts cliche. That can't be right. Maybe these are just her preferred pronouns? Either way, I guess I'll use she for the rest of this review.
Now, some of you are probably asking questions like, how does Furiosa's womanhood stop her from being an action hero? But don't worry, he backs up his position with nothing. Literally nothing. He just sort of assumes he's correct, even though he gives no real evidence. Alright, let's see what he has to say about Immortan Joe. It can't be much worse than what he said about Furiosa.
Additionally, Joby is old, diseased, and covered in these nasty sores and the like. On a base level, this is simply discomforting to look at, and is a lazy way to emotionally manipulate your audience. Throw in a few disfigurements, some deformation, and a midget, and you've successfully catered to everybody's Darwinian instinct to despise the weak and unhealthy. Okay, so he's fat and gross, but if that's not enough evil for you, he also locks up beautiful women in a vault to use as breeders. Bam! The final nail in the coffin. Mistreating women, children, or puppies is a flat out no-no. Never mind that these girls obviously get some of the best food, drink, and housing as compensation. Never mind that they are some of the most privileged, well-cared-for people in the Citadel, or for that matter, anywhere else presented in the movie. Never mind that most everybody else has it so bad that they worship water. A fat, ugly, diseased man is porking models against their will, and that's the very definition of evil.
Okay, that was not what I expected. At least he's right about the water shortage. I wonder why it's so scarce.
Do not, my friends, become addicted to water. It will take hold of you, and you will resent its absence.
I guess it's just one of life's great mysteries.
In summation, Immortan Joe is a man capable of creating all of this: a functional society, of drilling for and storing drinkable water, of building a military force of loyal war boys, all in this arid, cloudless, bumblefuck wasteland. But he's actually a useless ham monster who's tricking everybody into it. Not asking for a lot, Feels Road, just some semblance of cause and effect.
Okay, let's take a look at the 3 things ER thinks Joe should get praised for and see if his arguments actually hold up to snuff. Point 1. A functional society. The claim that the Citadel is a functional society might seem to have merit on the surface. After all, while it's not a particularly nice place to live, it at least appears to be a well-oiled machine. At least until we get into the issue of succession, that is. You see, something that our critic dances around is that the reason Joe keeps these women as property is because he needs an heir to sustain the capital after he's gone. And well, this might surprise you, but the vampirically pale old man covered in sores isn't exactly in what you would call peak condition. The Citadel is in a place where the death of a borderline zombie would cause the whole thing to collapse. Calling that stability is like calling the Catholic Church a world-class provider of childcare. Point 2. Water. ER claims that Joe deserves credit for supplying water to the masses. This conveniently ignores the fact that Joe has been deliberately keeping said supply scarce to keep the masses dependent on him. Our critic is essentially praising Joe for solving the problem that he created. He's just blatantly ignoring what's happening in the film. And speaking of ignoring things, let's get to Part 3. Military Force. Let's take a look at his final claim, that Immortan Joe should be praised for creating the Warboy militia, because things start getting interesting here. In regards to the other 2 claims, our critic was ignoring the movie's points. Here, he's ignoring his own. Don't believe me? I'll prove it. During a segment I cut for the sake of time, he says this.
And look at Joey's military force of cultic followers, who are absolutely nothing at all like Muslims, we swear it.
He literally says they are cultists, compares them to those who hate outsiders so much that they're willing to unalive themselves just to kill them, and frames their presence as lazy writing of unsophisticated villains. Then, he turns around and frames creating such a force as a good thing. Our critic is treating the villain with kid gloves and straight up denying reality to facilitate his teen boy level acts of simpery.
Anyway, back to the main character. Furiosa heads out of the Citadel with a bunch of escorts, but surprise, she's actually smuggling out Joey's harem. And it's at this discovery that any of the internal logic of this film completely collapses. Let's review. Why are they trying to escape? Well, duh, because the girls felt like property. Now, they were the most well-treated, coddled property ever, and obviously had it better than almost everybody else, but these people are ugly, and filthy, and old. Why feel bad for them when you can feel bad for well-off, beautiful women with principle?
Alright, so let's sum up his defense of Joe's behavior for a second. ER argues that the wives ended up having access to various amenity that Joe's gave them, thus proving that Joe was fair and just to his wives. Ignoring the fact that this argument acts like there's nothing wrong with giving women the Andrew Tate treatment, it glosses over one crucial detail. The water and food they are given are only scarce because Joe makes them so. The film literally introduces Joe by having him shut off the water valves to show us he's a bad dude. I'd also like you to know that ER says they felt like property, instead of they were property. Lastly, on the subject of the Citadel's commoners, he knows we're supposed to feel bad for them, right? Joe's treatment of them is literally how the film establishes he is the bad guy, and their decrepit states are supposed to show the hell he's subjecting them to. Next, our critic raises a bunch of questions over Furiosa's escape plan. So let's go over them bit by bit.
How did they get out? Fields Road never says. We know these women were trapped in a vault, but for whatever inexplicable reason, Furiosa had the access to plan this escape with them. From this, we must assume that Furiosa is telepathic, as are all the girls, because women are the Borg.
Furiosa is a high-ranking lieutenant in Joe's organization, and someone he puts quite a lot of trust into. That means if she gets caught doing something suspicious, the Warboys will let it slide, since they'll assume it's Joe's orders. We literally see this happening at the start of the film, when Furiosa diverges from the path to Gastown and heads to the Green Place.
Boss, we're not going to Gastown? Bullet found.
We're heading east.
I'll pass it down the line. New orders! Thunder off! Thunder off!
Where are they headed? Somewhere called the Green Place. It's supposed to be some fertile paradise. Sounds too good to be true, right? Almost like it's made up. Like it would be impossibly frighteningly stupid to run from a bomb-ass library to a fairy tale.
Furiosa is from the Green Place. We know it exists because she is from there. There is literally a scene where he says this verbatim. This isn't something that's easy to miss.
Why did they decide to escape when surrounded by a bunch of enemy escorts instead of any other time at all?
Furiosa came surrounded with escorts because it ensured she could fend off any potential attacks from bandits. You know, like the one that happens at the literal start of the film.
What was their plan to deal with the escorts?
So what's the plan? Plan? There ain't no plan!
When Joey hears of the escape, he throws a shit fit and sends everybody after them, because two of these girls did technically just kidnap his prospective children. Thing is, when I say everybody, I mean basically everybody able-bodied enough to go, leaving the Citadel undefended.
By the time they reach the Green Place, the gang can just get the Vuvolini to take care of them. The escorts are not a big issue. Also, why does he think that the wives running away from their abuser while pregnant counts as kidnapping, while Joe locking them in a vault and pursuing them miles across the desert to force them back is somehow fine? It just feels a bit weird is all. So many questions ER asks about the film can just be answered by watching it. Speaking of that, let's cut to the part where Max tries to steal the war rig.
He done did it. Made a clean escape, left behind exactly what his pursuers wanted, and has a ton of water to last him however long. A damn good job of surviving, Max. You know, it would be hilarious if the movie just dumped these pointless empty characters, and Max got to be the star of his own movie again. Ah, fuck. Well, it could be worse. At least now Mad Max can live up to his name, because this is far and away not the rational thing to do. How the fuck is taking these chicks, all of whom are gnashing their teeth and waiting for the opportunity to murder him, as well as being further pursued by Joey and his thugs, conducive to survival?
The reason Max lets them in is because the war rig won't start unless Furiosa inputs the rig's activation code. If Max stays, that means he enters the custody of Joe's encroaching horde. The same horde that kidnapped him and stole his blood. This is literally explained in the film. I don't know how you could miss this.
Here's the best part. The green place was real, and supposedly every bit the fertile land it was reported to be. Some years back. Left in the hands of these women, however, now it's totally barren and lifeless. These old hags had some of the most scarce and valuable resources in this wasteland, and they squandered all of it. Yes, these people are the ones we're supposed to be rooting for.
So what ER is saying about the Vuvolini is just a bold-faced lie. The film never implies that they destroyed the green place. The film says that it was destroyed, but it never says they did it. What he's saying is not true. He is lying and he knows it. Let's skip to the end. At the end of the film, Nux, the war boy who defects to the good guys, sacrifices himself by crushing the war rig to stop the villains from leaving the canyon. Here's what ER has to say about it.
Could go on about how this piddly wreck isn't going to stop this, when this didn't stop them before. But no plot.
Okay, I'm going to put this simply. The reason the war rig halts the war boys' advance is not because it's an insurmountable wall. It's because the crash creates a deadly pileup. You can see this happening in shots ER puts in the video.
Now, is it just me, or is this ending thoroughly depressing? The Spice Girls return to the Citadel for some ill-advised reason, dump off the corpse of the leader for some incredibly ill-advised reason, and everybody up top just accepts it.
Okay, let's break this down bit by bit. The reasons our heroes returned to the Citadel is because it had everything the green place used to have, such as water and crops. It's a place where Furiosa and the gang can rebuild civilization. Max discusses this with Furiosa right before they go to the Citadel. The reason Joe's corpse got dumped was because the Citadel higher-ups claimed he was immortal, and showing his corpse proves that myth to be just that. The reason the Citadel leadership doesn't fight back is because Joe took literally every last able-bodied war boy with him. And well... they're not exactly gonna come back anytime soon. Yard is basically asking, why is it a wheelchair-bound dwarf picking a fight with the folk who single-handedly took down the entire military? The question kind of answers itself.
I'm sorry, but there's just nothing to latch onto in this movie. I mean, I can't really downplay the movie's incredible cinematography. Hell, I'll even grant that the editing is really fun and keeps things going at a good pace. The acting is also quite serviceable, though Tom Hardy couldn't really seem to decide on an accent. But in the end, all for what? The action's great, more practical effects and all of that, but that's it. And
he does understand the things he just listed are things the film is going for it, right?
Warboy may be the only character with an arc in the whole film, when he switches to Furiosa's side because interchangeable model actress 43 batted her baby blues at him. He's not a terribly complex character or even memorable, but he's likable enough. Extra sympathy points for naming his tumors.
That's not true. Max goes from the start of the film as a murder hobo who's only looking out for himself to someone who willingly helps the gang when he has a chance to bike away from Joe's encroaching horde. We also have Cheeto, who goes from having second thoughts about leaving Joe to pretending to defect so she can help Furiosa onto Joe's car during the final fight.
At least tell me this, Feels Road lovers. Why Mad Max? I mean, other than the blatant attempt to scam people into the theaters under the guise that they were going to a Mad Max film.
When will the lies end?
I find it interesting that he's treating Mad Max as an important cultural institution, because he previously said he was treating this film as a standalone, because he hadn't seen any of the others. In fact, not only does he know nothing about the franchise, he says this.
To have a complete and well-rounded opinion, I would have to see the other movies as well. And unfortunately, after watching this one, that ain't gonna happen.
He literally says that he's not watching the other films in the franchise because he thinks this movie proves them to be doo-doo. He can't decide if Mad Max is a good film franchise laid low by SJWs, or one that's just inherently terrible. If you're gonna stick up for a film franchise's honor, at least stick up for one you think is good. At least have enough of a spine to be honest to your audience. It's been a wild ride, so I'd like to take a look at the stinger, because I find its conclusion to be quite bizarre.
But seriously, just go watch Kingsman if you need a decent 2015 action flick. At least Kingsman knew how silly it was being.
Do you remember that part at the beginning of the review, where he said Mad Max knew it was ridiculous, but reveled in it? Because apparently, he changed his mind. His understanding of the film isn't just inaccurate, it's downright contradictory. And that's not accidental. You see, the reason I brought up ER was not just because it was fun to shit on, but also because he's a good example of a worrying phenomenon. He's basically part of a subsect of channels that advertise themselves as regular film reviewers, while failing to do any of the due diligence expected of a serious critic. These channels are less about providing analysis or giving recommendations, and more about tearing down anything seen as even vaguely woke. That's not to say you can't criticize woke films. For example, the channel The Morbid Zoo made an excellent criticism of the cash grabs Hollywood has been spewing out to replicate the success of Get Out. Seriously, subscribe to her. She's very good. The problem with these channels isn't that they dare to criticize the sacred arts of wokeness, but rather that they exist to spread a particular message. That anything remotely woke must be bad. That the lefties have ruined film by casting minorities and saying that women should have rights. They will do anything to convince you of this, whether through skillful omission, half-truths, or downright lies. They want you to be nothing less than absolutely furious at any film with queer people in it. A good example of this is The Critical Drinker, a critic who gained notoriety for his dishonest behavior when the channel Pillar of Garbage, who I'm going to abbreviate as POG, made an excellent deconstruction of his Glass Onion review. If you're remotely interested in this topic, then I highly recommend you check out POG's channel for yourself. He has an entire playlist dedicated to people like our critic. So if you'd like to learn more about these people, subscribe to his channel. He makes really good shit. These channels don't give a damn about the genuine care and artistry that goes into the craft of filmmaking. They're interested in selling you a bigoted worldview. And I think ER is a good example of these channels for this reason. Where other reviewers would try to cover their ass by calling Furiosa and Mary Sue, ER straight up says it's ridiculous for a woman to be a badass. Where other reviewers would vaguely reference Mel Gibson being cancelled, ER shows the anti-Semitism and treats it as normal. I hate ER more than any of his ilk, but I have a little bit of respect for him. Because unlike his brethren, he doesn't pretend to be a decent person. He knows he's a bigot, he's proud of it, and he wears it as a badge of honor. Where his friends cower in fear at the thought of being recognized as racist, he at least has the gall to admit it.